Sometimes I feel like there's these folks out there who it's like, oh yeah, it's like, you go to a Reiki thing and then you you go to your yoga teacher training and then you're just constantly looking for like ways to cure yourself.
Yeah.
The darkness retreat situation, it emerged because a friend of mine, Colin O'Brady, he is like a mountaineer and has all these amazing records, climbing Everest and Antarctica and stuff. He had done one. And I had seen this video online of him emerging from the darkness retreat. And I just saw like this just beautiful, like seeing light for the first time, like seeing life for the first time, like that extended high that no amount of like, dope or like mushrooms are going to give you, like just that real resonance with being alive. And I texted him, I'm like, dude, you just did a darkness retreat. Like, tell me the deal. Is this real? Is this like another endurance challenge? Because he's an endurance guy. Mm-hmm. Or is this like a real deal, thing? Is this like something that's applicable, right? Mm-hmm. That you can actually apply into your life? And he's like, 100%. He's like, endurance will only get you so far. He's like, this is real deal, like letting go. This is real deal, like healing.
Are you ready, boys?
That's Chris Burkard. I'm Jamie Brissack, and this is Soundings, brought to you by the Surfer's Journal. The Journal is a member-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from Costa Sunglasses, FCS, Finisterre, Howler Brothers, Patagonia, Rainbow Sandals, Vans, and Yeti. More like a book than a magazine, the Journal delivers 136 pages of independent storytelling every 8 weeks, covering the people, culture, travel, and art of surfing. To learn more and to subscribe, please visit surfersjournal.com. Chris Burkard is a photographer and artist. Born in 1986, he grew up on California's Central Coast and knew from a young age that he had to get out, and out there. Primarily self-taught, Chris won the Follow the Light Foundation grant in 2006, and away he went, working as a senior staff photographer for Surfline, Water Magazine, and Surfer Magazine, as well as freelancing for The New Yorker, National Geographic, and ESPN.com. In 2009, he was contracted by Patagonia Inc. to be a projects photographer. Chris's photo books include 2009's The California Surf Project, 2013's Come Hell or High Water, The Plight of the Torpedo People, 2014's Distant Shores, 2015's High Tide, and The Boy Who Spoke to the Earth, also from 2015. Along with still photographs, he makes films, including 2013's Russia, The Outpost Volume 1, 2015's Faroes, The Outpost Volume 2, and 2017's Under an Arctic Sky. You might glean from those titles that Chris has a penchant for the colder locales. On that note, he started photographing Iceland about 2 decades ago and fell so in love with the place that a couple years ago, he up and moved there with his wife and 2 sons. I was recently in Iceland on a Patagonia social impact trip that Chris was supposed to take part in, but, as I learned in our chat, conflicted with his 90-mile fat tire bike ride across Vatnajökull, Europe's largest glacier. We spoke a couple days after his return at my hotel in Reykjavik. His face was a wind, sun, and snow-ravaged shade of red. He oozed the afterglow of this epic adventure. I was envious and inspired. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. This is an honor.
Yes. Now, you've just been on a bike ride, not a normal bike ride.
No, a little obscure. Yeah. Oddly enough, cycling kind of found me, I guess you could say, like 6 years ago or so. And it's kind of been, a new way of exploring this beautiful world of ours. And I think it's a compliment to photography. But this last trip was an expedition to cross Iceland's biggest glacier, Vatnajökull, which is the biggest glacier in Europe. It's about 90 miles long, whatever. And we did an east to west crossing, a west to east crossing. And we added on some miles in the beginning. In the end, it was about 230 miles of winter riding on fat bikes, fully loaded with like mountaineering kit and all that stuff. I mean, basically cresting up over the top the highest point of the glacier, riding down over the eastern tongue, down a glacial tongue down to basically sea level. It's hard to even sum it up in 20 seconds, but it was like a mind altering trip that I'm still like partially back from mentally. And my body is just like so tired, just looking for calories, pretty famished. It was a big expedition. I mean, more people have been on Everest than have crossed Vatnajökull under human power.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 90 miles, I'm assuming they're not flat miles. So I'm guessing this takes days.
Yeah. So the trip itself was 230 miles in total. The glacier component was 90 miles. And as you crest the glacier, what's so cool about it and what's awesome is that all this really ties into, the reason that you came to Iceland, which was, looking and examining this, these beautiful river systems, how they complement the sea life, how the salmon farming and everything is all kind of intertwined. The glacier, like, it gives life to all of that. Mm-hmm. It's such a cool component of the country because everything kind of, spawns from that one big source of energy. Mm-hmm. The glacier is what creates all these dams, that gives these dams the ability for energy to be created in Iceland to sell it, which is not a great thing. But it's like when you start to really think about its connection to the people, it's super fascinating. And as you climb up, it's like a 2 to 3% grade for like miles. Once you get to the top, it's crazy because you look around and you feel like you're in a frozen ocean. Mm. And I've often felt like only a surfer knows the feeling because you're looking around, you're seeing undulations of like ice, but like it looks like waves. It looks like swells. And they go on forever. And it's not, you want to think it's flat, but it's not. And when the sun isn't there, it looks dead flat. But right when the sun pops out, you start to see the shape of it.
Yeah.
So it is. It's basically like an ocean,
Yeah. And are you shooting the whole time, or do you have like a camera around your neck, or is your gear sort of on your back and you need to stop? And are they well composed pictures, or are you snapping a lot?
It's definitely a lot of like trying not to slow down the crew that I'm with, trying not to slow down the experience, because I think in the traditional sense of I guess you could say alpinism, the goal is to constantly progress forward, constantly move forward, and not take too much time. So there's nothing that's like composed or like, hey, let's do that again, as where like sometimes, growing up shooting surfing, you'd be like, wait for this set and then jump off the boat, or something like that. There's never any of those moments. So a lot of it's like riding ahead, thinking about a photograph. I've got cameras attached to me in like a little chest pocket thing. I'm oftentimes kind of compromising the tools that I'm bringing because I really want to be nimble. Mm-hmm. And I really want to be able to quickly shoot and not have to like change lenses. So I'm just bringing 4 cameras, film camera, GoPro, tiny Sony point and shoot camera, and then my phone. And I pretty much am using those tools as kind of the storytelling, modality, I guess you could say.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you and your family live here in Iceland?
Yeah, we moved from Central California, which was my home, Pismo Beach, and decided about 2 years ago, after coming here a handful of summers together. For me, my fascination with Iceland has been about 20 years. I came here first on a trip for Men's Journal to actually document the surfer Timmy Turner. He had just been diagnosed with his staph infection in his brain, Huntington Beach surfer. I mean, pretty much, I think the audience of the Journal will be well versed with Timmy Turner and his exploits in the tropics. And basically, when he had his kind of diagnoses, the doctor was like, dude, you can't surf in warm water anymore. So he at that point, it was like cold water only kind of situation. So he really wanted to come here. Men's Journal wanted to profile him. I documented. We came with Josh Molkoy, Sam Hammer, Ian Batrick. It was an amazing crew. This was like 2007, 2006, something like that. It wasn't in any way the first trip here because, Teddy Grambo had been here, and I want to say maybe even Tom Survey and Dustin Humphreys and some other people, but Iceland just like it caught hold of me. And so it's been a 20-year love affair. And
wow.
We eventually moved. And I think that the impetus was more so because as a dad, I had kids that were getting to that age, 9, 10, when we moved. And I wanted to just show them that the world is a bigger place. And it took me until I was in my mid-20s to even recognize that. I grew up in a super blue-collar conservative home, and I love everything about that. But it wasn't until I started working for the magazine, it wasn't until I started traveling as a surf photographer that I actually realized the world was more loving, more open. There was other ways of seeing the world, politically and so on. I guess I just wanted to give them the sense that like they could make a choice when they get older,
Yeah.
and that there's a bigger sense of what's out there.
Yeah, how fortunate. I think I had a similar experience too, and it's one of the great things about surfing. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's sort of built into surfing is the idea of travel, and if your eyes are open while you're on the road, you inevitably sort of see other cultures, and it
Completely.
expands you so much.
Absolutely. Do you feel like there was a formative experience that like was the pinnacle moment, or was it kind of just all of it wrapped together?
Well, you know what's so great is I think like I grew up in the era of Surfer and Surfing magazines. Those were
right.
the two magazines, and I came in the late '70s, and travel was such a big part of it. And there were
Huge.
these fantasies. I remember there were Lightning Bolt, which was the brand that Jerry Lopez and Rory Russell and Jackie Dunn rode
Yeah.
for, and they had this ad. I want to say it was the back cover. It was a prominent position in the magazine. And it was always these exotic travels, and
Yeah.
it was like this
It was
travel
like
log.
saved for that. Yeah.
Yes,
I love
exactly.
that.
Yeah, and there was a shot of Rory Russell riding a camel with boards like strapped to the side of
I
the
know the
camel.
exact photo. So yeah, so awesome.
Yeah. So I think like my surf dreaming, part of it was like tearing apart a wave, but part of it was going far aflung, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah. So when you talk about coming here and kind of connecting with Iceland, what specifically was it about the place that grabbed you?
I think that growing up in Central California, for as tame as California is, it still felt when I was young pretty feral and pretty wild. You'd drive up the coast to the southern tip of Big Sur, and you'd be ducking barbed wire fences and looking out for angry farmers and ranchers and whatnot, and you'd be getting kind of shown the entrance to this wave or that wave, and there was always like whispers of Dave Parmenter surfing this or that, like stuff you grew up with. Like there was a lot of lore, and I think that when I came to Iceland, I'm like, whoa, this is like everything I love about that on a bigger scale with more waves. And the thing, in California, you're limited. It's like you got two wind directions that kind of work, and then everything else is dog shit. So here it was like, oh, well, there's an island. It's a circle. You can always find an offshore wave. I mean, right here, we're sitting here, we're on a peninsula. Like you could find an offshore wind direction somewhere. So for me, that was the beauty, was like when I came here, first and foremost, as somebody who just purely wanted to look for surf, it was like, this is it. This is the Mecca.
Yeah.
And if you can bear the cold water and you're comfortable in that, then it really opens things up. But what was fascinating was finally spending like a summer here, because I'd usually come in the fall or the winter, looking for those bigger swells. But finally coming in summer, being like, dude, there's endless longboard waves. You actually don't need gloves or booties. You're getting these systems that swing off the East Coast, and they'll actually come up with decently warm water. Like there's sessions I've had here that were warmer than Central California. Like we get that upwelling in the summer in Pismo, and it's brutal cold. And here it was like, there were times where it's just the water is super bearable. And so that was the draw. And I think that the wildness of the landscape, that really cemented it. But what kept me interested, what kept me really engaged were the people. You had a chance to meet, photographer Eli Thord Magnuson, and he's a dear friend of mine and somebody who I met, maybe, 10 plus years ago. And it was people like him, people like Ingo Olsen, people here that I witnessed kind of this birth of the surf culture here. I feel like I got to have a front row seat to like, not the early days, but like kind of the rise.
Yeah.
And it was just felt really pure, really beautiful. And I felt like in some way, you feel like you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And that felt really profound.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of your photography has taken place in kind of colder climates, maybe higher northern latitudes. Is there, I guess, just like Central Coast, knowing Pismo Beach, right? Like, I've always been cold at Pismo Beach.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the beach or in the water.
Right.
Do you feel a natural sort of affinity toward the colder climates?
That's a great question. I think it's less about liking. Dude, I hate being cold. It's the worst feeling in the world. But it's more about what the cold provides, which is, more empty lineups, more empty landscapes. I think that it felt like low-hanging fruit when I first came here and I started to see these landscapes where you have a lot of vertical relief, steep mountains that meet the ocean, just full stop, 90 degrees.
Mhm.
And when you're aiming your lens at things like that and the drama is there, it's painted before you, you don't need a great wave to make it look incredibly, compelling.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is like it almost felt like cheating. You show up here and you're like, oh, look at that beautiful offshore, like, 3-foot, like little, peeler. Like this is incredible. So I think that I was really the landscape photography aspect of it, kind of combined with surfing, really just paved a way for me to feel excited and connected. And obviously, like first and foremost, I always consider myself a landscape photographer. To be totally truthful, like that's what I wanted to be first.
Mhm.
But I realized very early in my career, or in my whatever aspirations to be a photographer, there was no way to make money doing that. Like just shooting landscapes of the Southwest or whatever. I mentored under a large format landscape photographer who owned multiple galleries and, and had all the time and the equipment. And I was this, kid living in the back of my Toyota truck from Pismo Beach thinking that like, this is not a viable option. So I need to find some other option. So let's, I don't know, pour myself into something I did know, which was like surfing, I guess. So yeah, that was that connection coming back here. It felt like everything I loved about landscape photography with everything I loved about surfing, and you combined them, and it was just powerful.
Yeah.
And even when there wasn't waves, I was just super intrigued and always finding something to shoot.
Yes. Yeah. I love, I've dabbled in photography myself, and there's a thing that I've experienced, and I can see it in your eyes that you have it in a huge way, which is that deep inspiration of kind of seeing rectangles and light and composition everywhere, framing. And so, when was it? At what point did photography like get in you in that way?
That's a great question, and it kind of goes back to what you had said earlier about travel, which was I don't want to like burst anybody's bubble, but like I never picked up a camera with the aspirations of being creative. I picked up a camera because I was in desperation about wanting to leave the small town I grew up in. Like I had a great childhood, nothing wrong with that, but I just kind of felt like, okay, it's the same, 6:00 news. It's the same dinner table conversations. Growing up in a small town, you wonder what else is out there. And I looked at the camera as like, oh, this could be the way to see what's out there. I didn't know what was out there. I didn't know what the world was. I had never owned a passport until I started working for Trans World Surf.
Wow.
I had never traveled outside the country until I was on assignment with a camera. So it was maybe good and bad. Like it was kind of crazy because in the beginning I felt like I was filtering a lot of complicated experiences in the world through a camera and not just like letting them be and not just knowing how to engage with people. I would encounter somebody awkwardly, put the camera up to my eye and like take a picture thinking that that's how that's how you transmute the experience. Yeah. But I just didn't know what I was doing. And I was young and I was 22, 21 years old. Didn't go to college, kind of gave everything I had in my life to that craft. And it taught me so much. But what I'm saying is that the camera for me was always kind of this passport to travel. And then it eventually became a creative tool, and it eventually sparked that desire to tell stories. And I think that it was the evolution of realizing, oh, yes, this can get me there. But once you're there, once you've gotten there, wherever there is, like you have to do something with it. You have to create something meaningful. You have to, you want to tell a compelling story, or maybe you want to bring something back for the people that you care about to learn something that they didn't know. And that gave way to storytelling. And I think that once I realized that there was that potential, that got me excited. But I never really considered myself like an artist. I've never thought of myself as like a creative. Those weren't terms that I think I really resonated with early on.
I share something similar in my kind of magic carpet was my surfboard, but I had the strong sense of I got to get out of this place. Like that was just such a thing.
Where was this place? Can I ask?
It was the West San Fernando Valley, Agora High School, Westlake Village. And I'm grateful. I can look back and I'm most grateful now for actually it being the kind of springboard, because God forbid if I would have loved the place I grew up in, I may have never left. I mean, I've lived in New York, and I look at kids who grow up in the city, and I think, well, where do you go from here? I mean, you could go to nature, but you're not. But you're kind of at the pinnacle in terms of a metropolitan city and its cosmopolitan sophistication.
Completely, yeah.
But
well, and that's the challenging thing is like when you've been intellectualized to death, essentially, you know, and you have all the opportunities that can lead you. I mean, you can, you know, work your way up. It's like, then all you really have is to work your way back sort of down to a more primitive lifestyle, I guess you could say, or a more primitive living, or a return to nature, which is kind of a complicated path.
Yeah. When you were growing up and feeling that thing, then you verbalized it really, really well. Did you imagine yourself kind of as a world traveler?
I would have liked to think that was the goal, or that I was capable of that, but I don't even think I knew what that means. It's like, you know, saying you're in love when you're in high school, you know, you don't even know what it means. And I look back now at like, what does it mean to be a world traveler now versus what it meant 20 plus years ago? It meant something totally different. And I think at the time I just craved being somebody who wasn't ignorant, I guess you could say. Like, you know, like I just wanted to know what pizza tasted like in the place that it was made, you know, and you go to Thailand, you eat the Thai food, you go, you know, the little things. And I think that it's informed every part of who I am. Like, you know, there's that classic saying that I know is like very, you know, overused these days, but like travel was my education. It was my schooling. And I really mean that because I chose to quit college. I remember I was using financial aid money to like pay for film and buy, you know, like basically buy cameras. And I was taking like the minimal amount of credits I could to keep that financial aid. And I realized at a certain point, I'm like, I'm just ditching class to go shoot surf up north in you know, Northern California or whatever, go to Santa Cruz or go to Huntington Beach. And I'm like, I am doing a disservice to this school. Like I'm just, you know, just trying to milk it as best I could, because at the time I was the only kid in my family who, only person in my family who had a chance to go to college. And because of my ethnic background and stuff, there were some advantages given to me. And so I took advantage of it. And ultimately what I'm saying is like, it was all I had. You know, this path was at the time, it felt like that. It was like the only option that I had. And so, yeah, I think sometimes when your back's against a wall, you kind of thrust yourself into those experiences. And the idea of like, you know, traveling the world was almost too far away to imagine. For me at the first point, it was like, I just want to get out of my town. And then I want to get a little further. And then I want to get out of the country. And then I want to see what's there. And I want to, you know, I looked at those photos that you were talking about, you know, the surfboard and the camel. And I would look at Ron Stoner, Tom Survey. Like these were the people that I was so inspired by. Knott and Peterson, you know, like photos of, you know, in the Namibia or in the Sahara Desert or wherever it was, you know, you just, that feeling of wanderlust was so palpable. I could smell it.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple decades on, is it feel the same? Are you learning as much? Do you feel like you're still getting the buzz?
I get the buzz, but the buzz comes now more from like experiencing it with my kids. Yeah. Sharing it with other people. Cause you know how it goes. Like you've ridden, you know, a perfect head high, you know, tubing wave only so many times. And then the novelty kind of, it starts to wear off. You need something bigger. You need some, you know, whatever. Your appetite grows a little bit. But the joy in like sharing that with somebody else, at least for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but like that's the only way to relive it a little bit. And I've been all over the world, feel super grateful, seen a lot, I've experienced a lot of beauty. Like I can't even articulate it in a way to where I want to now just see others experience it. And that's like the funnest thing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's really cool, but it's also a little painful, you know, because you'd give anything to like have that experience for the first time. Like I would give anything to come back to Iceland for the first time and see it and experience. I'm kind of like looking for that constantly. Yeah. And maybe if there is a spark, that's the spark that keeps me going. Like, how can I reinvent this experience? How can I find it again? How can I, you know, and I don't want it to be like a junkie status. Like, I don't want it to be like, you know, because sometimes, you know, when enough is not enough, then you start to like crave something bigger. And, and I don't know that that's the answer. To me, it's more like, how can I make it more meaningful? by either telling a really interesting story, getting involved in maybe an environmental issue, advocating for the places I love, sharing it with people that I care about. So it's kind of now I'm reframing it in that filter.
Yeah,
I guess.
No, that's so interesting. I think I had the strong wanderlust from a young age, and I would look around and see people leading more conventional, traditional,
Right.
Going that route.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of kick against them. In my mind, I thought, that's not what I want.
Totally.
And by seeing what I didn't want, I saw what I wanted. And then
I love that. That's the way. Yeah, exactly.
But what I did find, I remember when I was kind of turning 40 and I was living in New York and I was on the go quite a lot, even with New York as my base. I remember having the first time I thought this thing, and maybe it was the beginning of a midlife crisis, which is, what am I running from?
Yeah.
Like when I was 20, it was sort of like, this is this badge of honor, this thing of like traveling. There's no better way to educate myself. There's nothing I could do to be in life, right? And then having done it for sort of a couple decades, I thought, well, why can't I actually just sort of settle down? Have you ever thought about that, or does that ever come to mind?
No, you're striking the exact chords that I'm always listening to, which is that, yeah, it's you realize at a certain point that it's easier to travel and to stay traveling, or in other words, to frame this differently, to work and stay working than it is to stop and process. And for me, that really came to a head when I had my first kid at 26. And I was like, well, I grew up in this blue collar environment. And the idea at home when I was a kid was like, if you say no to work, that's like sacrilegious. Like you take every opportunity that comes, you work, the ox is in the mire, you're working, not nose to the grindstone. It's great. But then what happens when like you're given a lot of opportunities? Then you don't know how to say no. And then you just said this beautifully, but by saying no, you're saying yes to what you want, and that's not something that anybody teaches you. People want to celebrate, your next, cover shot or your next article or your whatever. All they're going to do is ask you, anytime you're in an interview and anytime you're in a, event, like, oh, what's next? What's next? Nobody is ever advocating for you to slow down, I guess is what I'm saying. And so the only person who's going to do that is you, or maybe your therapist or your wife or whatever.
Yeah.
So it really came to a head for me when I had my first kid, and I realized, wow, I was choosing to be out on the road working because I knew that that's where I was rewarded and that's where I was celebrated and that's what I was good at. And what I wasn't good at, or what I, at least at the time, was I didn't really know how to be a dad. I didn't grow up with a dad. And all these experiences were new, and they were fairly threatening. Holding a newborn kid, being like, I don't remember this feeling. I never had that. My father passed away before I was born, so that was really confronting for me. And that's been the last 6 years, I would say. And part of that experience, moving to Iceland, was to do exactly what you're talking about, which is almost trying to deconstruct everything that I had built. I mean, there was a moment in my, career life where I had 6 employees and a huge studio in Pismo, and we were shooting jobs for Apple and Toyota and all this. It was amazing. And, money's flowing in and it was really good. And I'm like, that's great. But then where do you go from here? All this means is you're more busy and you have less time to be with the people you care about. Like, that's not an answer. That's actually and what's wild is I can just pat myself on the back, and from the outside looking in, everybody's like, you're the pinnacle of success. But I'm like, dude, I'm so unhappy, so unhealthy, no time to be in the water, that's just, So yeah, confronting, exactly. Like you said.
But in working with that, because you're so many people never get to that place, right, where they actually have to sort of assess or reassess where they're at, and they're getting those big jobs you just mentioned. From that, what have you learned in terms of, as an artist, if I may call you that? I think of you as that. Having had great success in your career, having sort of traveled to far-flung places and having these incredible experiences, what's where have you found the sort of place, the spot, the
even medium, the healthy,
the grace note?
There's a size and a scope of each person's life that I feel feels manageable. You can, you can hold it in your arms and it's not spilling out. And I feel like I've been with both. I've been with next to nothing, like living below poverty level kind of situation, like eating, the cans of tuna out of the back of the Toyota truck, before like van life was a sexy ideal, when it was just like, yeah, you're living in your car. Like it's not cool.
Yep.
To then like having so much that you don't know what to do with it. And I don't know where that even medium is. I'm really trying to find it myself. I would say right now it's still tricky because I'm managing a business in California and one in Iceland. I've got, and I never really wanted to get into like international business at all, but here we are. And I would say that to me, I guess what I look for is markers. The marker to me is if I'm so busy and I wear busyness as a badge of honor, then there's something's wrong because it's not a badge of honor. And if I don't have time to advocate, work towards, or kind of support the things that really matter to me, like environmental initiatives or protecting certain places, then I am doing myself a disservice. And that, I feel like there has to at some point be some kind of markers in your life where you're like, well, if I didn't have the time I needed with my loved one or with my kids or whatever, or the time for me, if those buckets aren't filled, and yeah, you're making a great paycheck, like that's not the answer. And dude, it is rough at times. I mean, I don't want to get into this like business conversation, but like it is rough at times when you're like, I'm turning down like crazy good money, but that's going to put me 3 months on the road to go direct this film for a, who knows what company, what brand or whatever it is. Like that's going to hurt me emotionally and physically and strain these relationships. And I think that there's a point of maturity that we all reach where we're like, that's just not worth it. Like,
Yeah. When you talk about environmental initiatives, can we talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I'd love to. And not because I have an agenda, but because it's something I'm super passionate about. And it's what brought me to want to be in Iceland is, growing up in the US, first and foremost, like love the US, amazing, amazing country. But I never felt like I could make a difference in terms of like, protecting this place or whatever, like these, I don't know, trail systems or whatever it is in California or this environmental initiative. In Iceland, it actually felt like I could make a difference. And when I started documenting, first and foremost, Iceland's glacial river systems, there are these beautiful braided river systems that actually flow down from the glacier to the ocean. What's so cool about them is that the first time I ever photographed them, was because I was shooting surfing. Because this is how the sandbars were formed in Iceland for all of its incredible reef setups. What it's really known for is what it really has is endless beach breaks and crazy river mouths. And those river mouths, when you trace them back, they go to the glacier. And what flows out is glacial sediment. And that glacial sediment is just like crushed minerals and rhyolite from the pressure of the rocks. It's so cool. And when you're in the air and you're looking at them from a plane, they look like these braided arteries or patterns. I mean, it is hard to articulate. I'll send you some photographs of it. But it is cool because it's this shallow water weaving over tributaries and sandbars and stuff like that. And it's flowing out to the ocean. Point being is that when I started to photograph it, it was purely just out of the passion of wanting to shoot something cool. Like, oh, this is pretty, this is beautiful. And then I met a really amazing pilot, a friend of mine, who started to really help me understand that these were all at risk and that there were 13 more proposed dams in Iceland, and those dams were going to basically destroy these river systems. And what's challenging about a lot of the dams in Iceland is that there's not a system put in place to remove them ever, really. They become like 20%, they run at like 20% efficiency after a few years because there's so much silt in them. It's just like it's not a ideal environment for dams. But obviously the country needs to run, and this is one of its economic drivers is extractive industry. And that is, obviously gives power to this country, but also the power is sold offshore. So advocating for those river systems, advocating for a national park in the highlands of Iceland, because a lot of times people travel here, they think everything's a national park. You go to some waterfall or something, you're like, yeah, this has got to be protected land. It's actually just some random farmer's property that's letting people, go and hike through it or see this waterfall, but it's mostly not protected land. And so the goal was always to advocate. So anyway, I worked for 7 years on this initiative to make a book about the river systems so that those who were in the policymakers could actually understand what was at risk. Because when you have this changed, altered perspective, being in the air in a small Cessna flying 4,000 feet over the rivers, you see the beauty of it all unfolding. And imagine never seeing that and then signing your name to basically destroy something forever. And why that's challenging is that you got salmons, the keystone species, this animal, fish, it takes critical ocean nutrients and goes back to the same river source. In Iceland, recorded up to 50 to, I think, almost 50 to 80 miles upstream and brings those nutrients there. And so this obviously, diminishes that ability, right? It's killing fish. It's like, a lot of that glacial sediment also is what helps to create healthy environments for whales. There's a lot of kind of downstream effects, I guess you could say. And then secondly, the open net salmon farming in these fjords, this was never something I was even aware of. I mean, to be honest, I would just eat salmon like the rest of us, didn't really care. And I ended up going in on some property in a remote part of Iceland with a friend of ours, Ellie Thor. And full disclosure, the reason being is because there was sick waves there. And, it's every surfer's dream to own your own little piece of the ranch, right? And that's kind of what it is. And one of the hard things is, going out there and there's salmon pens right out in front. And I can see over the years the water clarity changing because of that. And this was not far. In fact, one fjord over from where the big escape was. I think it was like 2,500 fish or 27,000. I can't even remember how many fish got out. Yeah. And then those altered salmon are going upriver, breeding with native fish. Yeah. And it's just complicated. Like Iceland, turned me into a fly fisherman, as cheesy as that sounds. I love it. I love being able to see these beautiful native, fish and, in their home environment in these protected waters. And to see that was wild. So last year, or maybe the year before, I can't remember, in the fall, when that breach happened, when the salmon broke free, we went upstream and we were fishing out these salmon. These mutated fish, which basically, I don't even need to go into the details of why they're so bad for the environment, but like you're looking at these things and their flesh is coming off. They're all white. Yeah. You can see so clearly the ones that were farm raised versus, and this is in a river system where there are natural fish there, their home, right? Coming up there to spawn, and then fish that have broken out of this pen, and dude, they look like, Night of the Living Dead. They're just flesh hanging on. Yeah. So that made me feel like I had to speak up. And to be honest, being somebody who is foreign here, it's not the most like, it's not frowned upon. It's just like people aren't really stoked on that. Yeah, and so I've really had to be conscious of that. Wow. Sorry, that was long-winded. I know. No. I appreciate the space.
No, and I will just say that I've spent the last week here learning about all of this, and it is terrifying. And when you have the farmed salmon mating with the wild salmon, it's just slowly kind of knocking away, diminishing the DNA of the. It
really
wild.
Is.
Yeah.
And when you have a place that has essentially the most pure, bloodline of this fish ever, and the water, people go through such great lengths to protect these waters for that. You're like, oh my God, like, how can we let this happen? Yeah. And not only that, but what it's doing to the ocean bed, the floor bed of the sea, and everything else around. And I think what's crazy is there's just such an easy solution. Like human beings, like we get it. Like you need to give jobs to these remote areas. That's the most sensitive thing. Is it's so easy for us to sit on a high horse and take this approach, being like, you got to end this. You got to end this practice. It's so dangerous. So it's hard when you're seeing this fjord that's suffering, and this is going to bring jobs. Yeah, this salmon farmer is going to bring jobs. So the goal is to try to convince people to bring that farming on land, because at least that will keep the jobs. It's a slightly more expensive process, but as a consumer, I'm happy to pay more. Yes. And it's sort of puts you in this weird position, because you're like, well, I don't really want to buy farmed salmon at all, but I want to kind of buy the farmed salmon on land because at least that I'm showing, my dollars are voting that this practice, although not the best, is better, way better than this practice.
Yes.
And that's kind of this like we're caught in this middle ground, right? Like it's so, yeah.
Yeah. No, you articulated it very well. While driving here, I was with a friend from Patagonia who was just involved in the last week of kind of our education here.
Yeah.
And he'd mentioned that you'd done a darkness retreat of some kind.
Yeah.
No, and I was so curious. It sounded incredible. So let's
Dude,
talk
I
about
love that this is what we're talking about on the Surfer's Journal podcast.
Well,
it's so awesome.
It's a segue from the salmon to the darkness.
It's so sweet, man. No, I dig it. Honestly, full disclosure, like I never intended to. I'm not like this person searching for like enlightenment. Like it's not like. Sometimes I feel like there's these folks out there who it's like, oh yeah, it's like, you go to a Reiki thing and then you like, you go to your yoga teacher training and then you're just constantly looking for like ways to cure yourself.
Yeah.
The darkness retreat situation, it emerged because a friend of mine, Colin O'Brady, he is like a mountaineer and has all these amazing records, climbing Everest and Antarctica and stuff. He had done one. And I had seen this video online of him emerging from the darkness retreat. And I just saw like this just beautiful, like seeing light for the first time, like seeing life for the first time, like that extended high that no amount of like, dope or like mushrooms are going to give you, like just that real resonance with being alive. And I texted him, I'm like, dude, you just did a darkness retreat. Like, tell me the deal. Is like, is this real? Is this like another endurance challenge? Because he's an endurance guy. Or is this like a real deal, thing? Is this like something that's applicable, right? That you can actually apply into your life? And he's like, 100%. He's like, endurance will only get you so far. He's like, this is real deal, like letting go. This is real deal, like healing. And I reached out to the guy who runs it, the guy named Scott. It's based in Oregon. It is called like the Sky Cave Retreats. And basically it stems from a traditional form of basically people going into the dark for an extended period of time, no light, no sound other than the sound that you make, no electronics, nothing like that. And I think traditionally they would do it in caves. This was underground. So it was like a mound in the earth where you would walk down into basically like a little cabin room. So it's kind of hard to explain, but like you are underground and you are in the earth. But it is like a little built out room. And basically I'll give you the full rundown because it's kind of hard to understand it if you don't fully comprehend, but it's a 5-day thing. You arrive the first day. You kind of get used to the room, just like this hotel room we're sitting in right now. The lights are on, everything, right? You get your food. It comes through a double door. So like there's no light emitted when it gets given to you. And you're getting used to everything, and it's all kind of childproof. So like you're not going to bonk your head or like smash your face or whatever. There's a little bath, there's a little stretching area, there's the bed, and that's pretty much it. Toilet, and then day 2, it's like, okay, next morning the lights are going to be off. And I remember it's so funny because I remember asking them like, okay, so like when do you lock and unlock the door? And like, when do you turn off the lights? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, they're like, we don't lock any of this. Like, this is all you. And dude, in that moment, it became so much scarier. And just how silly, like the human being that like, whoa, I'm in charge of this experience. Like I could open the door at any time, but I'm not. My phone is just in the other room, but I'm not touching it. I'm not reaching for it. And so that, it almost makes it that much harder. But the retreat was basically 3 full days, a little over like 80 hours of basically contemplation, darkness, no sound. The only time I'd hear sound is when an animal would walk on the roof.
Wow.
Or water would hit the ground. You turn on the bath and you hear something that's not your own voice, your own thoughts. And it's penetrating. It breaks the silence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the silence is like really profound.
So clearly, you're not speaking with any of your fellow retreaters.
No, you
Okay.
are totally solo.
Yep.
And you don't even see any other retreaters. I only saw people who were like maybe like 100 feet away, there's another dome kind of thing. And then once you're out, once I got out, like I met one or two of them, but you're kind of just doing your own thing.
Incredible. Because I've been curious about, and I have friends who have done Vipassana, which is silent, but
Silence.
it's certainly not darkness.
Yeah.
But this is silence and darkness, basically.
Yeah.
What about where did you go? Where did you go in your head? What emerged? What did you
really want to
learn from it all? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's go there. It's funny because I think like a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, I don't know if I would have been able to talk about this because I didn't have, first of all, I just didn't have the words at the time. And I think that it still felt like such not a wound, but like an opening that like I wasn't really wanting to share. But now I do feel like I'm willing to do that. And I remember on the very first morning, waking up, total darkness. And I think it's important to understand like the reason that I did this first and foremost was in no capacity because I wanted to test myself. I wanted to find out who I was. It was because I felt like I was at a crossroads in my life and, call this my midlife crisis. But I felt like I needed a more clarity that the choices that I was making were the right ones. And in a world and in a life, which is you're just so, I am so inundated with people and requests and things and just my time didn't feel like my own. And so I was like, well, I need to give myself some of that time. And that's why I decided to do this. And obviously it was I went a long way to be there. I grew up in California and I would have been 15 hours away, but I flew from Iceland, 7,000 miles away to do this. And because I knew also it was like such a good facility and everything. So I was really there and I was really committed to the experience is I guess what I'm saying. And I really felt grateful that it was that hard because had it not been hard, I don't know that I would have taken it as seriously. And that first morning, I remember I woke up and I didn't know what time it was. And I reached for my wrist and my watch wasn't there. And then I reached for my phone wasn't there. And then I started to sit there and I thought, well, how long have I slept? And then I was like, I have no idea. And then I was like, what time is it? I have no idea. I don't know if it's 2 a.m. or if it's noon. I have no idea what time it is. And in that moment, it was like shrinking into the rabbit hole. It was like everything in my life is derivative of time. I am so out of touch with how I feel because shouldn't the first thing you ask be, wow, I slept so good. I feel great. Or, whoa, I feel really tired. I should go back to bed. Or, oh, I'm hungry. So none of those thoughts entered my mind. Those weren't even relevant. It was more like, well, what time is it? Because I need to work backwards from the end of my day, given that, in a normal day, it'd be like, oh, well, the kids have this at this time and I got to have dinner ready, but I'm going to eat lunch here and I got to wake up and drink my coffee. And then I'm going to do that. It's like everything is working backwards from this structure of our day. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, this is how we operate, but time, the clock, that determines everything. We never wake up and ask ourselves in that moment, like, how do I feel? And again, I can't speak for anybody else but me, but that was what I felt. I was like, well, this is going to be the theme of this is like asking those questions. Am I tired? Am I hungry? How do I feel? And what was fascinating was when I started to ask those questions, other questions manifest. And it sounds so silly. It's like, what is that old adage? Like, the best journeys, answer questions in the beginning you didn't think to ask or whatever it is. But that is true. It is true. Like I started to think about other things in my life. I started to question sort of everything and I looking at things a little bit more acutely based upon how I felt, not about how it would affect me year-wise, time-wise, how many months, how many years, how many this, how many blah, 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 how much time do I have left? And that was fascinating for me. as somebody who's very much like control oriented
Yeah.
and thinking about it and always trying to have a grip on their career, where it's going, and it just let me like fully let go for a second. And I felt just an immense gratitude. I also, you're in there and you don't see anything. And I remember when I dreamt the first night, I dreamt that I was under the ocean and I was duck diving a wave. And then I was duck diving another wave, and then another wave, and then another wave. And it was like, too many. And all of a sudden I just went down under the wave and I stayed under the wave, and it was like pure blue. And all of a sudden I was traveling just under the surface. And I was like, this is incredible. And the why it was so significant is because like I never remember my dreams. But in that moment, when the dream becomes the most, it's like the most sensation you're experiencing in your whole day. It was the only time I saw color, so it was so vivid.
Yeah.
It was the only time that I heard anything or I manifest any noise that wasn't my own breath or water or whatever. That was fascinating. And then you go to eat your food that they give you, and it's the same like 7 dishes, right? They give you all your food at once and you choose when to eat it. You can eat it all at once, you could not, whatever. But dude, I remember cracking open this like, jar, this like Tupperware, glass Tupperware thing, and cracking the edge. I mean, like, oh my God, is that peanut butter and jelly? Like I made love to this peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I remember being like, opening up the bread, being like, whoa, are there notes of chocolate in this peanut butter? Like just, I appreciated things. It almost makes me want to cry. Like I appreciated things in a way that I never had, or I just forgot how to. And how simple that like the darkness brings you back to that. And I think that what's so cool, and I can say this for sure, is like those things have stuck with me. And I've done the therapeutic mushroom thing, and I've done the other things, and just as a way of helping my own personal growth. But this sticks with you in a really beautiful way. Like it embeds into your DNA.
Wow, that's so incredible, because while you were saying this, in my own self-indulgence, I was remembering, and I've done the therapeutic mushroom, the kind of hero dose guided psilocybin journey.
Right.
And that was the closest, that was the analog that I was drawing from my mind. But it sounds, what is it? How long ago was it exactly?
Dude, I don't even remember. It was this last summer. So yeah.
So 7,
I think
8
July,
months.
something like that. Yeah.
How do you think, did it change you, or what has stuck with you since then?
What's interesting is it's changed me in every way, but also in nothing. I don't know if that makes sense, but like it's a part of every bit of my life now, given that the choices that I've made today are now just this 1 degree of difference from the choices I would have made before. And that's kind of how good experiences are. Even for me, like doing psilocybin in the therapeutic dose, it was like every choice I've made in my life in this moment is because of that. It traces back to that. And what it was like a 1 degree shift. But now we're talking years, and that 1 degree is now miles away from who I was and what I cared about, what I valued. And like the darkness retreat feels like a softer change because it's more like embedded in you. When I feel less afraid of the dark, and I was never afraid of the dark. I know that sounds silly and childish, but like I welcome it.
Yeah.
I welcome the silence. I welcome what I find there. I welcome who I meet there. And it gets me more excited. And, for somebody who, we started this conversation where I was talking about riding my bike across a freaking glacier, which is like so ridiculous. For somebody who obviously finds a lot of joy in movement and has a hard time settling down, that was like a forced full stop. And I can imagine it's what it might feel like, having some of those opportunities taken from you, being in a wheelchair or whatever it is. And just knowing that the mind is a beautiful place and that there's somewhere amazing to go there. It gave me more permission to enjoy the downtime Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely
like,
does.
like I slow down now and I'm like,
Yeah.
slowing down is an exploration in and of itself.
Yeah.
And the thing that's so funny is that those who only know how to go, they miss out.
Yeah.
And I am saying that because I am that person. I was that person. I'm fighting right now still against that person,
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. We live in that time where a lot of kind of binaries, dualities are being challenged, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
happening in gender most prevalently. It's
Yeah.
happening in sexuality.
Yeah.
But the idea, when you talk about like being more comfortable in the darkness, I'm assuming you mean the metaphorical darkness, and I'm assuming you mean like things that would be quote unquote bad or uncomfortable, you're able to exist there more, for lack of a better word, comfortably. Like, do you feel that way?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are situations in life that like used to give me like anxiety, not in like in more of like an OCD way, just because of my personality and like, you always, and it makes sense that I've got this, kind of overly complicated like work life and all these things. And so it gave me permission to let things be a little more and realize that like, oh, it's okay if you take a step back and things are kind of in disarray.
Yeah.
And it's a little messy and that's all right. That's all right. That's all right. Like what's important is how you feel, because there's no amount of like organizing your shit or like, doing this and that that's going to make you happier. That's just you. And I'm this is like me in the third person, like giving myself some therapy right now, but I'm just saying that like, there's no amount of that that's actually going to make you, appreciate time more or be better for these people or anything like that in your life, and I guess what I'm trying to get at here is like, yeah, the darkness and the experience from that, it paves a way for you to really love yourself because you're going to meet yourself there.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you're going to meet. And if you don't like what you see or you don't like what you find, you're going to struggle big time. And I'm not saying I like saw myself and was like, oh, I'm the best. It was more like, okay, I can accept these things. I can accept this selfishness and I can accept the fact that I burned this relationship and I fucked over that dude and I like I can accept that that's who I am. And I'm happy that I'm working toward being the best version of myself. And I'm going to give myself grace and I'm just going to be the very best version that I can moving forward. And like, that's hard sometimes.
Yeah. No, it's really, I love that our conversation has gone here and it started with the riding across the glacier because I think I did a thing a while ago when I was in a really in a very difficult place in my life, and it's called the Hoffman process. And they say it's like 5 years of therapy in a week. And while you're there, you can't read books. You can't, no sex or masturbation. You can't exercise. All these little evasions, all these things that we do to effectively like run from ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
So it was nowhere near as extreme as what you've just described. But I definitely know that thing of kind of trying to sit with yourself, and it really is difficult. And I think when we started this, our conversation could so easily have gone into like Chris, the adrenaline junkie, Chris, the adventurer. And you are that, and I admire you, and I see that in you.
There's a duality for sure.
But like going to this other place is really, I think that can be. It's great to have both. It's it's great to have all of it, I guess.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And what's so funny about it as well is like, I am those things. Like those are a part of me. I get it. It's so fun to have a career that has given me permission to experience those things. But like in so many ways now, those experiences definitely over the last 5 or 6 years have looked more like, oh man, what's like the growth that can happen here? And how can I extrapolate this experience to then inspire somebody else to seek their own thing? Because for me, like moving across the glacier is just a huge meditation. That's like, it is like, it's basically like going back into a darkness retreat when it's zero visibility and all you can see is like 6 inches in front of your tire or your skis or your foot, the crust that's right in front of you because you have no sense of horizon, no nothing. I mean, talk about going internal, like you and I get it's an element of suffering and you're definitely there, kind of going through the endurance experience, but like it really, allows you to go deep on some things and think about some things. And so when I come out of those experiences, I always find that I'm more sensitive, more vulnerable, more malleable, like a bit more like softened clay, as my wife likes to call it. And the goal is like, you don't need to seek those things out to find that. But my hope is that through that darkness experience, now I think what I've found is I realize I don't need that as much.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because that's what you want to do. You want to be able to be soft for the people around you and, you know, and still be strong and whatnot. But like, this is the emotional challenge that I think any person goes through, you know, figuring that out.
Yeah. What are you thinking about your life, the work, the photographs you've made? Is there something that stands out as maybe a peak moment or something that where you learn the most, perhaps?
I would say like what's interesting has been the photographs that I've had that were maybe the most iconic in my career, whatever. Those were some of the most significant moments. There was a moment in the Aleutian Islands when I was with Josh Molkoy. We shot the cover of Surfer, and it was this beautiful volcano on this island that was in the background, and he's there hitting the lip, and there's a bird in the shot, whatever. But it's like what that represented for me. There was a time in my life and I'm trying to prove to the magazine that these places are worth going. And I remember like kind of getting permission to go, but it's sort of like this gray area, like, hey, if you don't score, like, we're not going to pay for this kind of thing. And I'm like maxing out credit cards. I was married at 21. So a lot of these trips in these early days were like, you know, these huge conversations or arguments with my wife or whatever, like just strenuous, you know, to go to risk and then to find that like reward felt so much more rewarding, so much bigger for me, so much more grandiose, so much like not like an I told you so to anybody, but more like an I told you so to myself. Like I'm so happy that I trusted my intuition. And when the clouds parted that morning, we left our little hunting cabin in Umnak Island and the Aleutians and drove, you know, 10 miles out to the bay and saw peeling right offshore waves with the volcano. I just about shit myself, but ultimately I was like, it felt like the culmination of all of these things. And I've always thought a lot more about my images emotionally than I have like in the physicality of it. Like, yeah, I shot the picture and it was taken at this and whatever. And you know, I'm grateful it was acknowledged and loved by many on the cover of a magazine, but that to me means something way bigger than any of that, you know, and means something more meaningful. And there have been a lot of other moments too. There's a photograph of actually two surfers in Iceland here getting ready, changing in the back of a Toyota, or sorry, a Range Rover, Land Rover Defender, whatever. And they're just like bone cold, bending over. It's like a monochromatic image where, you know, you can just kind of see the cold in their body posture. And it became this like sort of, I guess I could say like iconoclast kind of moment where when I had a gallery here downtown, this is so funny, but in Reykjavik, right next to like the most expensive hotel in kind of the downtown area, I remember people coming in and it was always like this, like the sort of tech CEO guy who would be like, I want that photo as big as you can get it. I've got a private plane here. Can we load it up? Kind of vibe. And I was like, I never really understood that. Like, what is the draw? And I think that a photograph to me that like kind of represents this level of commitment, like this level of you know, maybe I'm never going to experience that personally, but like the commitment of these people to that sport, to that craft.
Yes.
I really love. And I love that could kind of transmute that feeling over. So yeah, I guess the images have always been more feeling oriented, and that's kind of what's moved me the most.
And what are you working on now that you're excited about?
Oh man, so many things. You know, I'm still trying to speak as loudly as I can about advocating for these river systems. Luckily, a lot of those proposed dams have been halted, which has been great. So big, so huge. And I'm working on just kind of helping advocate for these farmed fish situation and getting them out of the fjords and trying to look at ways in which I can kind of amplify the messages there. But personally, I'm kind of thinking about some more film projects that I'm really inspired by. I really enjoy working on things that can inspire kind of the younger generation. One thing I've been really passionate about is like thinking about mentorship. What does that even look like? What did it look like for me? I feel like I was absolutely the byproduct of some great mentors. Pete Terrace, Jane Siebert at Patagonia for many years. She was my photo editor there, and she was like a mom to me. Like she taught me so much. And so anyway, I've really dreamt about this idea of making a film about mentorship. What does it mean? How does it look? Is it easy? You know, is it, you know, emboldened? Like, is it challenging? It should be, right? But interviewing some of these esteemed photo editors, because there's so many people now growing up in photography that have never worked under a photo editor. They don't even know what that relationship means or what it looks like, or an editor of any kind. I mean, you have this experience, you get it. Like, and I think painting that picture from their perspective, the ones who kind of saw the potential and raised the crop of, you know, whatever, is powerful. And I want to capture that voice before it's gone.
Yes.
And I think that's almost the thing that makes me the most sad is like, yeah, it's sad that the job of surf photographer is literally non-existent. That was a career that when I looked at the options on the table, I thought that was a real thing. And I realize now it's like a whisper. Like it's for those that got to do it for the years, like what a special thing in the world. And just like that, a photo editor with the way magazines are going and that will be an obsolete role eventually. And I want to capture that voice and share that. I'm also working on a photography guidebook that's more of like a kind of like a Derek Zoolander guide to photography. What I mean by that is sort of like take the example of, you know, kids who want to learn how to read good and do other stuff good too, kind of thing. Anyway, it's a reference from the movie. But the point is that so often we get into this complicated process of what it means to take good images or what we need to bring or what we need to use. And I want to make something that's like pocketable that people can take with them to kind of remember like what's important. Like how do you stay present while shooting? How do you get, you know, this type of image you want to use with just like what you have around you? You know, you're going to build a tripod out of rocks. I don't know. And kind of maybe helping people enjoy the image taking process a little more. Maybe some like thoughtful reminders. So it's a bit of like the, you know, Zen of, you know, camera experience. Yeah. As well as like some technicalities around it, but nothing too wordy.
I like this, and it's very timely given the kind of disposability of pictures in the present day VR phones. Yeah. What about what do you think it is that drives you?
You know, that answer has changed a lot over the years. I would say in the beginning it used to be servitude and duty a little bit, because. I remember when I got married at 21, I remember asking my wife, her dad, like he worked at a power plant and he was, you know, like, you know, all about family, you know, kind of thing, like get the solid job, you know, this and that. And I remember asking him at like a little family dinner, like if I could ask his daughter if I could marry her. And he's like, how are you going to support her? Just like dead face. And like at the time I was like, you know, I had expressed my like desires. I want to be a photographer. I've got this dream, you know, and like in that moment, it was like the dream just like a can under your foot getting smashed. And I was like trying to breathe a little life back into it. And I realized I'm like, you know what? Like I'll be damned if I'm going to like give up the dream and just take some ordinary job, you know, like, and so I mean, to be fair, like that probably turned me into a workaholic. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying it brought out the best of me, but that was it. You know, that was it. So, so I think in the beginning, what I was saying is servitude. Like it was like proving myself. Yeah. Servitude, that whole thing, making something of nothing. Because I truly feel like, you know, I kind of didn't come from my opportune circumstance, I guess you could say. And as that's evolved, now it looks way different. You know, I mean, those are old tropes. And so I'm trying to let go of some of those masks, but I know that it's about like, I want to prove to my kids that, you know, you can live a really big life and that you can also inspire people to like see the world around them differently. That you can, allow for, the world to change you in a beautiful way, nature to change you. And that's been a big part of my journey, is like trying to really appreciate nature, what it means, translate it in a bunch of different ways, whether it's through films, telling hard stories, ones that maybe challenge the norm. And I know that's not the elevator pitch, the version of my North Star or what inspires me, but it looks a lot like that nowadays.
I like this.
Yeah.
Do you have a hero or heroes? Is there anyone you're looking to regularly? They don't have to be down here on Earth with us.
That's a great
the question. Is broad.
Early days, it's always fun to kind of go through the realm. The early days, it was, Ron Stoner, big time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember oddly enough, for those that I kind of, I'm not in any way like a huge studier of the legends, I guess you could say, but I really leaned into a few photographers' work strongly and tried to understand who they were as a person. Ron Stoner being one of them. And I think that given the fact that he never traveled, or his image, or at least his most iconic images were always from California, he went to all these places that when I was growing up, I was like, oh, I could go there. And he made these iconic images, midday blown out, whatever Malibu shooting through balloons.
Yeah.
Like what in the genius that man had. And also, he was troubled and it's rough. And I think that in some way I really related to his story, given that I felt stuck in California. I never thought I would leave. And he made it beautiful. He made it exotic to me. And I kind of had to hold on to that because it was all I had. And so early days, it was a lot of Ron Stoner. And then I think as I started to travel, it became other people, it became, Dustin Humphreys was a big inspiration, just in terms of like the new guard. And then, but, Tom Survey, obviously, and quite a few others. But I think, as time has changed, now it's like, I feel like I find more inspiration in architecture and literature and, typography. I guess what I'm saying is like, I look to every other place but photography as a source of inspiration. But I constantly try to remind myself, like, it's always something I really appreciate is, when the world is your oyster and you can literally go anywhere to take a picture. And I'm not just saying that me in terms of my opportunity, but I'm just saying in general, people can jump on a plane, go anywhere. You can go to Iceland, you can do it. When I look back at Ansel Adams and I look back at Ron Stoner and I see these people who Ansel made all of his very best work within 400 miles of his home in San Francisco. His work that translated to millions of people and inspired, governments to change and wildernesses to be adopted after him and he meet multiple presidents. I mean, this is a guy who changed nature and our experience to it. And what people don't realize is that Ansel, when he started in photography, I've been really lucky to go through his archives, look at his negatives, read his journals. I had a really amazing privilege to do that at the Center for Creative Photography, which is in either Tucson or Flagstaff, Arizona. I can't remember, but it was beautiful. And you read his journals and you're like, dude, this guy is just like out there doing what he loves, like not thinking about, there was no fame in the moment. There was none of that, not appreciated for what he really did. And in the beginning, photography was just seen as a tool to document. It was originated by the military as a documentation tool. And in fact, him and the F-64 group, which was like him and Edward West and a bunch of other people, they were the ones fighting to make photography into an art. And when you'd go to an art gallery, and when they would go to an art gallery to present their work or a gallery of any kind, they'd be like, this isn't for photography, this is only for art. Only, canvas and oil and whatever. People don't realize that. Photography wasn't even viewed as an art form. You weren't a creative. You were literally, this is like, might as well have been just a button pusher. You know what I mean? Like you're just there to document a land mass so that the government can use it for whatever they, like that's what it was for. So I feel that joy seeing people who fought for something bigger than themselves and who also did it without having to get on a plane everywhere around the world. Because I look at my work and I'm like, yeah, dude, when you get to freaking fly to remote Alaska and go to the Kuril Islands, I'm like, you're going to shoot great images. I don't pat myself on the back for any of that. I think in many ways, like going there and not telling a bigger story is so dismissive of the place. It's like me being in Iceland and being like, yep, there's beautiful waves. It's such a cool environment. Like not getting involved in the issues, not understanding the problems, not using photography as a tool to advocate for something bigger than yourself. And that's what Ansel did. And that's what I love about his work. And I look at people like that as a mentor. And I think I can find that now, like when I'm full circle heroes, I can find that in a lot of other modalities than just photography.
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for making the time.
Totally. Thank you.
Soundings is brought to you by the Surfers Journal and is produced by me, Jamie Brissick, and Jonathan Shiflett. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Our theme song is Give Me a Wave by Asuka Matsumiya and Paz Lenchantin. The Surfers Journal is a reader-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from Costa Sunglasses, FCS, Finisterre, Howler Brothers, Patagonia, Rainbow Sandals, Vans, and Yeti. The journal is published bi-monthly. If you haven't done so yet, I encourage you to visit surfersjournal.com and subscribe. Thank you for listening to Soundings, and until next time.